A homeless woman showed up at a billionaire's gate with an impossible offer. Give me food, and I will heal your dying son. The millionaire didn't believe it, until the impossible happened. What she asked for in return changed everything he thought he knew about wealth, power, and what truly matters in life. Before we dive into this incredible true story of transformation, tell me, what city are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button because powerful stories like this one are shared here every week. Now, let's discover what happened when Richard Morrison said yes to the impossible. Richard Morrison stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, overlooking Manhattan like a modern-day emperor. At 47, he had built a tech empire worth $3 billion. He had everything money could buy: cars, houses, private jets, political influence. Everything except the one thing that mattered most. His phone buzzed. Catherine. His stomach tightened. These calls never brought good news anymore. Richard. Her voice was hollow. Dr. Yamamoto just left. The new treatment isn't working. Samuel's white blood cell count is dropping again. Samuel, his only son, 7 years old, with his mother's green eyes and a laugh that could light up any room. Except Samuel hadn't laughed in months. Not since the leukemia diagnosis had turned their world into an endless nightmare. What did he say about the trial in Switzerland? Richard asked, though he already knew the answer. He said to prepare ourselves. Maybe weeks. A month if we're lucky. Richard had faced hostile takeovers and economic crashes. But nothing had prepared him for this. For watching his son fade, while the world's best doctors shook their heads helplessly. I'm coming home. The drive to Connecticut felt like driving toward an execution. Catherine met him at the door, thin and hollow-eyed. They didn't embrace. They'd lost that somewhere between treatments. He's sleeping. The pain medication knocks him out. Richard climbed to Samuel's room. It looked like a pediatric ward now: 4 stands, monitors, medication everywhere. Samuel lay so small under the covers, his head smooth from chemotherapy, skin translucent. Dad. Samuel's eyes opened. Hey, buddy. How are you feeling? Tired. But I had a good dream. About flying. Like Iron Man. Richard's throat closed. That sounds amazing. Dad, am I going to get better? The question hung like a knife. How do you tell your 7-year-old son that reality is about to kill him? The doctors are doing everything they can. That's not what I asked. I heard Mom crying. I heard her say prepare. Richard looked at his son. Really looked. The boy who'd asked for a microscope for his 5th birthday. Who'd learned to read at 3. Who still believed his father could fix anything. I won't let you go, Richard said fiercely. I'll find a way. I promise. Samuel nodded, accepting this with absolute faith. I know, Dad. You always fix things. But as Samuel drifted back to sleep, Richard stared at the dropping numbers and felt complete helplessness. His billions meant nothing. His power meant nothing. That night, Richard sat in his study, surrounded by awards and photos of Samuel from before. His laptop showed experimental treatments, clinical trials, medical tourism. Nothing. Every door led to the same wall. Samuel was too weak for more aggressive treatment. Richard poured himself a scotch and walked onto the balcony. The estate stretched before him, perfectly manicured and utterly meaningless. Please, he whispered to the night sky, though he didn't believe in prayer. Take everything. Just save my son. The universe didn't answer. What Richard didn't know was that tomorrow, a stranger would come with an impossible offer. And he would be forced to choose between his convictions and his son's life. Morning came with cruel normalcy. Samuel woke with the same weak smile that broke Richard's heart daily. Catherine went through breakfast motions, though neither could eat. Richard was on a call with a Tokyo specialist when Margaret, the head housekeeper, knocked. Sir, there's someone at the front gate. She says she needs to speak with you about Samuel. Richard's head snapped up. Who? She won't give her name. Elderly. Appears homeless. She says she can help your son. Richard felt anger flash. Some deranged person exploiting their tragedy. Tell security to remove her. Yes, sir. Margaret turned to leave.
Wait.
What exactly did she say? She said, "Tell Richard Morrison I can heal his son. All I ask in return is food."
Food.
Not money, not millions.
Food.
It was so absurd Richard almost laughed. Let me see her on the monitors. In the security office, the screens showed an old woman at the gate. Ancient 90? 100? Dressed in ragged layers, a shopping cart beside her. But her face caught his attention. Deeply lined, weathered, yet her eyes were sharp, alert. She stared at the camera as if she could see through walls. "She's been there 20 minutes.
Just waiting," the guard said.
Catherine appeared in the doorway. She looked at the screen, and something flickered in her expression. "Who is she?" Catherine asked. "Nobody. A con artist." Richard turned away. "Have security remove her." "Richard." Catherine's voice stopped him. "What if she's not?" "Catherine, she's clearly trying to scam us." "None who only ask for food." Catherine looked at him with eyes that held no fear left. "What's the harm in talking to her?" "The harm is false hope. Our son is dying." Catherine's voice was flat, final. "In a few weeks, Samuel will be gone. Every doctor says there's nothing more. So explain what harm can come from listening to an old woman who only wants food." Richard wanted to argue. But she was right. What did they have to lose?
"Fine.
Bring her to the house. Security stays close." 10 minutes later, they stood in the foyer as Margaret escorted the old woman inside. Up close, she was striking. Despite her poverty, she moved with strange dignity. Her amber eyes surveyed the mansion without awe or envy. "Mr. Morrison. Mrs. Morrison. Thank you for seeing me." "Who are you?" Richard demanded. "How do you know about my son?" "My name is Miriam. I know about Samuel because suffering calls to those who can hear it." She tilted her head. "You don't believe me. You're a man of science. You believe in what you can measure and buy. Then you understand this is a waste of time." "Is it? You've spent millions on treatments. Consulted the world's best. Tried everything modern medicine offers. And Samuel grows weaker. So, what do you have to lose by trying something you don't understand?" Catherine stepped forward. "You said you could heal him."
"How?"
"I didn't say I could. I said I would if you meet my condition." "Food," Richard said flatly. "Not just any food. I want you to feed me. Every day. 3 meals. You, personally. Not your staff, not your wife. You must prepare and serve it with your own hands." Richard stared. "That's insane." "Is it? Samuel's illness is in his blood, yes. But healing isn't just chemistry. Sometimes it requires transformation. Not just of the patient, but of those around him." "You're talking nonsense." "Then send me away. Let Samuel die. And spend the rest of your life wondering if I was nonsense or the miracle you were too proud to accept." The words hit like a blow. Catherine gasped. But Miriam's expression didn't change, no malice, just patient stillness. "What are you?" Richard whispered. "Someone who can help. If you're willing to pay the price." She gestured around. "You have wealth beyond measure. I ask only for food. But given freely, personally, humbly. Can you do that, Richard Morrison? Can you serve someone you consider beneath you?" Pride and desperation warred in Richard's chest. Every rational bone screamed this was madness. But he thought of Samuel asking, "Am I going to get better?" His own promise, "I'll find a way. If I do this, you guarantee Samuel will be healed." "I guarantee nothing. But I promise I will try with everything I have." Miriam extended her hand. "Do we have an agreement?" Richard looked at Catherine. She nodded, tears streaming. He thought of Samuel believing his father could fix anything. Richard Morrison, who had never bowed to anyone, made a choice. He took Miriam's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong, skin warm, almost feverish. "We have an agreement."
"Good.
"But if this is a trick..." "It's not a trick," Miriam said quietly. "It's a test. And your son's life depends on whether you pass." Richard Morrison had built his fortune trusting his instincts. Those instincts had made him billions. Now, they screamed he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Yet here he stood in his own kitchen, a room he rarely entered, staring at ingredients Catherine had laid out. "She wants you to cook breakfast," Catherine repeated. "Eggs, toast, fruit. Simple food, made by your hands." "This is absurd. I don't cook. I haven't cooked since college." "Then you'll remember how." Catherine's voice was strained but determined. "Richard," I watched her touch Samuel's hand. "Just touch it." And he opened his eyes and smiled. Really smiled. The first real smile in weeks. "That doesn't mean—" "I don't care what it means. If there's even 1% of a chance she can help him, you will cook her 1,000 meals. Do you understand?" Richard had never heard his wife speak with such fierce intensity. She wasn't the elegant socialite or grieving mother. She was something primal that would burn down the world to save her child.
All right.
"Tell me what to do." What followed was the most humiliating hour of Richard's adult life. He cracked eggs, some successfully, some exploding. He burned the first batch of toast, then the second. The fruit he cut looked mauled. His hands, accustomed to keyboards and contracts, were clumsy with simple cooking tools. Finally, after what felt like hours, he had something resembling breakfast. Scrambled eggs, overcooked. Toast, dark but not burnt. Fruit, mangled but edible. He carried it to Miriam's room on a tray. She sat by the window, looking at the grounds. When he entered, she smiled at the tray as if he'd presented a 5-star feast. "Thank you, Richard." He set the tray down, fighting the urge to apologize. He was a billionaire. He didn't apologize to homeless women. Miriam took a bite of eggs. Her face showed genuine pleasure. "These are good." "They're overcooked."
No.
"They're made with purpose." "That's different." She took another bite. "Tell me, Richard, when was the last time you did something with your own hands?" "I work with my hands every day."
You type.
"You gesture. You sign." "But when did you last create something? Build something requiring more than intellectual effort?" Richard didn't answer. He stood there, oddly vulnerable, watching this strange woman eat his mediocre breakfast. "Your son is dying because your life is out of balance. The leukemia is real, the crisis is real. But illness doesn't exist in a vacuum. It grows in spaces where we've forgotten how to be human. That's not how disease works. Isn't it? Tell me about your life before Samuel got sick." Richard felt anger flash. "That's none of your business." "It's entirely my business. I can't heal Samuel without understanding the environment he's trying to survive in." "When was the last time you sat down to dinner with your family?" The question hit hard. 6 months ago? 8? There was always a meeting, a deal, a crisis. Work requires nothing. You choose work over presence. You've built an empire, Richard, but empires are cold places to raise a child. How dare you? "I dare because Samuel's life depends on truth." "You asked how I'll heal him."
This is how.
"By healing the sickness in this house. In this family. In you." "I'm not sick." "Aren't you? When did you last sleep through the night?"
Laugh.
"Do something just for joy." She gestured to the breakfast. "This meal took you an hour. When was the last time you spent an hour on anything not about money or power?" Richard wanted to storm out. But everything she said landed in places he'd tried not to look at for years. His absence from his family. How work had consumed everything. The fact that only Samuel's illness had forced him to finally be present. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to remember how to be human. To serve, create, give without expectation. 3 meals a day. Made by your hands. Served with presence, not resentment."
Can you do that?
"For Samuel? I'll do anything." "We'll see. Healing is a journey, Richard. For all of us. Now go spend time with your son. Really be with him, not just sitting there thinking about work." Richard left confused. He climbed to Samuel's room, where his son played weakly with a model car.
Dad.
"The lady said you made breakfast. You never cook." "I do now." "How are you feeling, buddy?" "Better, actually." "Isn't that weird?" Samuel held up his arm, and Richard saw with shock that his skin had slightly more color. My arm doesn't hurt as much. Richard checked the monitors. Numbers hadn't changed significantly, but there was something different about Samuel. A spark that hadn't been there yesterday. Tell me about that car. And for the first time in months, Richard spent an hour doing nothing productive. Just talking with his son about cars and superheroes. Samuel's laugh, weak but real, was the sweetest sound Richard had ever heard. That night, Richard brought Miriam dinner. He'd made pasta, with Catherine's guidance and salad. Still not good, but better.
Thank you, Miriam said.
Samuel is responding well. He does seem better. But the monitors. Numbers will follow. First comes the shift in energy, spirit. Then the body catches up. I don't understand any of this. You don't need to understand. You need to trust. And continue showing up. Day after day. Meal after meal. She took a bite. Tomorrow will be harder. Your instinct will be to return to work. Resist that. I have a company to run. You have a son to save. Choose. Richard thought of all the business, all the money that would be lost if he stepped away. Then he thought of Samuel's laugh this afternoon. I'll be here for breakfast. Miriam smiled. Good. Tomorrow, you learn to make soup. The first week was the hardest of Richard's life. Not because cooking was difficult, though it was, but because every hour in the kitchen was an hour away from his company. His phone buzzed constantly with crises. Product launch failing, key employee leaving, merger deal souring. His team video called daily. Richard, we need you. The board is asking questions. Investors are nervous. You can't just disappear. But he had disappeared. Into a kitchen. Into the rhythm of 3 meals daily, each prepared under Miriam's watchful eye. You're rushing, she'd say as he chopped vegetables. Why rush? What are you afraid of missing? I have a conference call in 30 minutes. Cancel it. I can't just. You can. You're choosing not to. Samuel is stronger today than yesterday. Did you notice? Richard had noticed. The change was subtle, but unmistakable. Samuel sat up more, ate better, even asked to go outside. The doctors were baffled. Blood work showed minimal improvement, but his energy was clearly returning. What are you doing to him? I'm doing nothing to him. I'm working with you. Healing isn't solo. It's a web. You affect Catherine, who affects Samuel. I affect you, who affects the household. Everything is connected. That's not medicine.
No.
It's something older. Something science hasn't found words for yet. She guided his hands on the knife. Slower. Feel the blade. You're learning to nourish yourself. To be present in giving. Richard wanted to dismiss it as mystical nonsense. But he couldn't deny Samuel was improving. Not cured, not yet, but undeniably better. On day 8, his CFO showed up unannounced. Marcus had been Richard's right hand for 15 years. You can't keep ignoring us. The Shanghai deal is falling apart. We need you in the office.
Now.
Richard looked at the clock. Almost time to make lunch. Marcus, I can't. Can't or won't. You're having some breakdown. Hiding here, cooking for a homeless woman while your company implodes? I get it, Samuel is sick. But you can't save him by destroying everything you've built. I'm not destroying anything. This is insane. You're a CEO, not a chef. You have responsibilities. I have a son who is dying. The word hung between them. Richard hadn't said it aloud before. But it was true. Samuel was no longer actively dying. The slide had stopped, maybe reversed. Marcus, I need you to handle things a few more weeks. The board won't stand for this. They'll remove you as CEO. Let them. Marcus stared like Richard had spoken a foreign language. You can't mean that. I've spent 20 years building that company. 20 years sacrificing my marriage, family, health for what? Money? Power? What good is any of it if Samuel dies? Richard felt something break open. I've been a terrible father. Not just since the illness. For years. I missed birthday parties for board meetings. School plays for deal closings. I chose the company over my son, every time. Now I have a chance, maybe the only chance, to make a different choice. By cooking for a crazy old woman?
Yes.
I know how it sounds. But Samuel is getting better for the first time in months. So whatever this is, I'm going to keep doing it. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to see something in Richard's face that stopped him. You've changed. I hope so. After Marcus left, Richard returned to the kitchen. Miriam had heard everything. That was hard, she observed. Everything about this is hard. Good. Transformation is supposed to be hard. She watched him resume chopping. You're getting better at that.
He was.
His hands moved more confidently now, the repetitive work becoming meditative. Tell me about your childhood, Miriam said suddenly.
What?
Why? Did you cook then? Richard thought back. My grandmother did. She'd make elaborate Sunday dinners. I'd help sometimes when I was young. What happened? I grew up.
Got busy.
Didn't have time for cooking. Didn't have time or didn't make time? Richard set down the knife. What's your point? My point is you've spent your adult life running from anything requiring you to slow down, to be present. That little boy who helped his grandmother, he understood something you've forgotten. That love is a verb. It's action. Showing up, doing small things that matter. I've provided for my family. With money.
Yes.
But Samuel doesn't need your money. He needs you.
Your time.
Attention. Presence. She placed her hand over his. This is what I'm teaching. Not cooking. Presence. Because healing requires it. That night, serving Miriam dinner, chicken soup from scratch, she did something unexpected.
She took his hand.
Come with me. She led him to Samuel's room, where the boy slept peacefully. Catherine sat in the chair. Watch, Miriam whispered. She placed her palm on Samuel's forehead. Nothing dramatic happened. No lights or sounds. But Richard saw Samuel's breathing deepen, his color improve slightly. What are you doing? What you've been doing. Giving life force. Energy.
Care.
But I can only do so much. The real healing comes from you, from Catherine, from the love you pour into your presence. Every meal you make, you're learning to give without expecting return. That energy, that shift in you, affects everything, including Samuel. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen him improve. Felt the change in yourself. Why is it hard to believe we're all connected? That the state of your soul affects your child's health? Richard looked at his sleeping son, then at Catherine's tears. I don't know if I believe any of this. But I believe in what's happening. Samuel is getting better. Then that's enough. Belief will come. For now, just keep showing up. As they left the room, Richard felt something shift fundamentally. A letting go of certainty, control, the need to understand everything. He was stepping into faith, uncomfortable territory for a man who'd built his life on facts. But for Samuel, he would step anywhere, even into the impossible. The board meeting was inevitable. On day 14, Richard couldn't avoid it longer. They demanded his presence in person at the Manhattan office. I'll be back before lunch, Richard told Miriam as he prepared breakfast. I need to make you lunch. You'll make what you can when you can. Today you face your other life. The one you're leaving behind. Miriam took the omelet. He'd finally mastered them. This will be hard. They'll try to pull you back. You must decide who you are now. The drive into Manhattan felt like time travel. Just 2 weeks ago, this had been his world. Towering buildings, rush of commerce, pulse of power. Now it felt foreign. His executive team waited in the boardroom. 12 faces, some concerned, some irritated, all confused. Marcus sat at the far end, expression carefully neutral. Richard. Karen, the board chairwoman, spoke first. We need to discuss your absence and its impact. Richard took his seat at the head of the table, but the chair felt wrong. Too big. Like a costume he'd outgrown. I understand your concerns. Do you? Thomas, his rival, cut in. You've abandoned the company during a critical period. Shanghai deal collapsed. 3 key engineers left. Stock price dropped 8%. We've lost 2 major clients, Karen added. The team is in chaos. Richard, we need you back.
Full-time.
or we need to make other arrangements. Other arrangements, Richard repeated calmly. You mean removing me as CEO? The room went silent. Karen shifted uncomfortably.
We don't want that.
But the company must come first. Must it? Richard looked around the table at faces he'd worked with for years. 2 weeks ago, I would have agreed. The company was everything. But my son was dying. Is dying. And I realized something.
He paused.
None of this matters without him. Richard, we understand what you're going through, Karen began.
Do you?
Have you watched your child fade day by day? Felt completely helpless despite all your power and money. His voice was quiet but intense. I've spent 20 years building this company, and in those 20 years, I missed my son's childhood. I chose every single meeting in this room over time with him. I thought I was building something important. But Samuel doesn't care about quarterly earnings or market share. He just wants his dad. So, you're choosing to let it all fall apart? Thomas challenged.
No.
I'm choosing to let someone else run it. Marcus, you've been ready for years. Take the CEO position. Marcus's eyes widened. The room erupted in murmurs. Richard, you're not thinking clearly, Karen said. You've had an emotional month. Don't make permanent decisions based on temporary circumstances. Temporary? Richard stood. My son's life isn't temporary circumstances. And neither is this. I'm done. Done sacrificing what matters for what doesn't. Done measuring my worth by numbers on a screen. He looked at each of them. You want a CEO who'll give you everything? Marcus is your man. But I'm going home to my family. For however long I have with them. The board will need to vote, Karen said weakly. Then vote. I don't care. Richard headed for the door. Marcus, my lawyer will contact you about the transition. I trust you'll do well. Better than me, probably. You actually care about this stuff. He was halfway to the elevator when Marcus caught up. Richard, wait. Are you serious? You're just walking away from everything. Not everything. I'm walking toward what matters. Richard pressed the elevator button. Marcus, you'll be great. You love this company in a way I never did. I built it because I could, because I was good at it. But it was never my passion. It was just my obsession. What will you do? I don't know. Make breakfast. Spend time with Samuel. Maybe actually talk to my wife again. The elevator arrived. Be happy, Marcus. Whatever that means. Richard drove home with his phone buzzing constantly, calls, messages, news alerts about his resignation. He turned off the phone and drove in silence. At home, he went straight to the kitchen. It was past lunchtime, but Miriam sat patiently at her usual spot. I'm late, Richard said. I'm sorry. You're exactly on time. What did you decide? I resigned. Walked away from everything I built. He started pulling out ingredients for lunch. They think I'm crazy. Are you? Richard thought about it as he began chopping vegetables. His hands moved confidently now, the knife an extension of his will. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally sane. And how do you feel? Terrified. Relieved. Free. He looked at her. Lost. I've been Richard Morrison, CEO, for so long. I don't know who I am without it. Then you'll discover that. And it will be the most important work you've ever done. Miriam smiled. Because that man, the one you discover, that's the man Samuel needs. Not the billionaire. Not the CEO. Just the father. Richard finished making lunch. Pasta with vegetables, simple but good. He served Miriam, then made plates for Catherine and Samuel. They ate together in Samuel's room, the boy sitting up fully for the first time in weeks. Dad, you're really home? Not going back to work? Samuel asked. Really home, buddy. For good. Samuel's smile was the only validation Richard needed. In that moment, he knew he'd made the right choice. The only choice that mattered. 3 weeks after Miriam's arrival, Samuel's doctor, Dr. Yamamoto, visits the house for a checkup and is stunned by the results. Samuel's blood work shows clear improvement, higher white blood cell counts, reduced leukemia markers, better appetite, and increased energy. Medically, none of it makes sense. When he asks what has changed, Richard and Catherine struggle to explain Miriam's presence and the transformation in their home, offering only that they are trying a holistic approach. Though confused and skeptical, the doctor approves short outdoor trips for Samuel and urges them to continue whatever they are doing, calling the progress remarkable. After the appointment, Catherine confesses something deeply personal to Richard. She admits that for years she was angry at him for choosing work over family, and that when Samuel became ill, part of her felt it forced Richard to finally confront what he had been avoiding. But watching Richard over the past weeks, fully present, caring, and engaged, has made her feel like she's meeting the man she married before ambition consumed him. Richard realizes how much time he lost, noticing for the first time the lines on Catherine's face and the silver in her hair. Overwhelmed with regret, he apologizes sincerely for his absence and for leaving her to carry the family alone. They embrace, crying together, releasing years of emotional distance. Catherine makes one request, that Richard never return to his old self once Samuel is fully healed. Richard promises he won't, and knows he can't. Miriam quietly witnesses this moment, smiling with quiet satisfaction, as if this emotional healing was part of her purpose all along. Later that afternoon, Richard takes Samuel on their first real outing to a nearby park. Samuel insists on walking part of the way despite his weakness. At the park, Richard pushes Samuel on the swings, watching his son laugh with pure joy. Surrounded by ordinary families, Richard realizes that the simple moments he once dismissed as trivial are, in fact, everything. An older man reminds him how quickly children grow up, and Richard knows, with certainty, that he is finally present. That evening, Richard prepares Miriam's favorite chicken soup. Over dinner, she observes that his transformation goes beyond behavior. It's something deeper. Curious and no longer trying to rationalize her, Richard asks what she truly is. Miriam explains that she is very old, having witnessed generations repeat the same mistakes. She describes her role not as magical, but as reminding people of what they've forgotten: presence, generosity, humility, and unconditional love. The rituals of cooking and serving are both symbolic and literal, creating energetic changes that ripple outward, even affecting Samuel's body. Miriam explains that science has not yet caught up to these truths, that consciousness influences matter, that love is a force as real as gravity, and that human connection has measurable impact, even if current instruments can't detect it. Richard, once dismissive of such ideas, can no longer deny what he's seen. When Richard asks how long until Samuel is fully healed, Miriam answers honestly, it depends on whether Richard can sustain this transformation once the crisis passes. She warns that real change is hardest when life feels normal again, and that Richard will be tested by old habits and temptations. He will have to choose, repeatedly, who he wants to be. That night, Richard lies in bed beside Catherine for the first time in months, holding her hand in the dark. She tells him she is proud of him. Richard reflects on how deeply he has changed and understands that his true purpose was never building companies or wealth, but building connection, choosing love, and showing up for the people who matter most. 6 weeks into Miriam's stay, disaster struck. Not from Samuel's illness. He continued improving steadily, but from the world Richard had left behind. Marcus called at midnight, his voice tight with panic. "Richard, I need you. The company is in trouble. Real trouble." Richard sat up in bed, Catherine stirring beside him. "What happened?" "A vulnerability in our software. Hackers got in. They've stolen data on 50 million users, personal information, financial details, everything. It's a catastrophe. The media is calling it the biggest breach in tech history." Richard's mind immediately went into crisis mode, years of instinct kicking in. He could see the whole situation, the lawsuits that would follow, the stock crash, the regulatory investigations. "Have you contacted?" "We've done everything by the book." "But Richard, this is beyond me. The board is panicking. Investors are threatening. We need someone who can handle this level of crisis. We need you." There it was. The pull Miriam had warned about. The old life calling him back. "Marcus, I can't. Can't or won't. Richard, this is 50 million people whose data is compromised. This is thousands of employees whose jobs are at risk. This is everything we built together potentially going down in flames. You can handle this. You're CEO now. I'm not you. Marcus's frustration broke through. I don't have your instincts, your experience with disasters. I'm good at running things when they're stable. But this needs you. Just for a few weeks. Help me navigate this, then you can go back to your new life. Richard looked at Catherine, who was fully awake now, listening. Then, he thought of Samuel sleeping down the hall. Thought of Miriam in her room. Thought of the promise he'd made to keep showing up, keep being present. How bad is it really? Richard asked. Stock dropped 30% in after-hours trading. Class action lawsuits are being filed. The board is talking about bankruptcy protection. Marcus paused. Richard, I know you've changed. I respect what you're doing with Samuel. But thousands of people are going to lose their jobs if this company goes under. Doesn't that matter? It did matter.
Of course it did.
Richard had never been the kind of person who could ignore that scale of suffering. I'll call you in the morning, Richard said. Let me think. After hanging up, he found he couldn't sleep. He went downstairs to the kitchen, his sanctuary now, and started preparing bread dough for Miriam's breakfast. The kneading was meditative, giving his hands something to do, while his mind wrestled with the decision. Can't sleep? Miriam appeared in the doorway in her nightgown, her white hair loose around her shoulders. Marcus called. The company is in crisis. Richard explained the situation as he worked the dough. 50 million people's data stolen. Thousands of jobs at risk. He wants me to come back and help. And what do you want? I don't know.
Part of me wants to fix it.
Knows I could fix it. But part of me knows that if I go back, even temporarily, I might not come back from it. You're afraid you'll slip back into old patterns. Yes. Richard shaped the dough into a loaf. But is it selfish to stay here when so many people need help? When I have the skills to make a difference? Miriam sat at the kitchen table. Let me tell you a story. 3 months after Miriam first appeared at their gate, Dr. Yamamoto sat in his office, staring at test results he couldn't explain. Richard and Catherine sat across from him, holding hands, waiting. I've run these tests 3 times, the doctor said slowly. I've consulted with colleagues. I've reviewed every piece of Samuel's medical history. He looked up at them, his expression somewhere between amazement and confusion. The leukemia is gone. Completely gone. No trace of cancer cells. His blood work is normal. Everything is normal. It's as if he was never sick. Catherine gasped, covering her mouth. Richard felt his entire body go weak with relief. How is that possible? Richard asked, though he already knew the answer had nothing to do with medicine. I don't know. Spontaneous remission happens, but not like this. Not this complete, not this fast. Dr. Yamamoto shook his head. I've been a doctor for 30 years. I've never seen anything like it. Whatever you did, whatever that holistic approach was, it worked. I just wish I understood it so I could help other families. Sometimes miracles don't need to be understood, Catherine said softly. They just need to be accepted. They drove home in stunned silence, both crying happy tears. When they arrived, Samuel was in the yard with Miriam, working on the treehouse. The old woman had insisted on helping, despite her age, and Samuel treated her like the beloved grandmother she'd become.
Mom.
Dad. Samuel ran to them, energetic and healthy, his hair growing back in dark curls. Miriam showed me how to tie real sailor knots. Look. Richard swept his son into his arms, holding him tight, feeling his solid weight, his warmth, his aliveness. The doctor says you're completely better, buddy. No more cancer. Samuel pulled back to look at his face. Really? I'm all better? All better. Samuel whooped with joy, then ran to Miriam and hugged her. You did it. You healed me. Miriam smiled, stroking his hair. We all did it, sweet boy. Your father, your mother, you. All of us together. She looked at Richard over Samuel's head. It's time. Richard understood. She was leaving. That evening, after Samuel was asleep, Richard and Catherine sat with Miriam in the living room. She had refused all offers of money, gifts, anything beyond the meals Richard had made her daily. You gave us our son back, Catherine said, tears flowing. How can we ever thank you? You already have. By changing. By choosing love. By learning to be present. Miriam looked at them both. But my work here is done. Samuel is healed. You are healing. It's time for me to move on. Where will you go? Richard asked. Where I'm needed next. There's always someone calling, someone suffering, someone who needs to remember how to be human. She smiled. But I'll think of you often. Your family is a beautiful thing now.
Keep it that way.
Will we ever see you again? Perhaps.
If you need me.
But I don't think you will. You have everything you need now. Miriam stood, gathering her few possessions. Richard, one last thing. Don't waste this second chance. Don't forget what you learned in this kitchen, making those meals. The world will try to pull you back into old patterns. Resist. Choose presence. Choose love. Every day. Every moment. I will. I promise. And teach Samuel what you've learned. Raise him to understand that success isn't measured in money or power. It's measured in love given and received. In presence. In connection. Richard walked her to the door. Outside, a car waited. He never knew how she'd arranged it, never saw her make any calls. There was so much about Miriam that remained mystery. At the door, she hugged him. Despite her age, her embrace was strong. You did well, Richard Morrison. You passed every test. You became the man your son needed. She pulled back, looking at him with those ageless amber eyes. Now stay that man. What if I fail? What if I slip back? Then you'll remember this moment. Remember Samuel's laughter. Remember the taste of presence. And you'll choose again. She smiled. That's all life is, Richard. Choosing again and again who we want to be. She walked to the car, and Richard watched her leave, his heart full of gratitude and sadness and hope. 6 months later, Richard stood in their backyard watching Samuel play with other kids on the completed treehouse. His son was fully healthy now, his hair grown back, his energy boundless. No one who saw him would ever know he'd been dying. Catherine came out and stood beside him, slipping her hand into his. Happy. More than I knew was possible. Marcus called. The company recovered. Stock is back up. They want to know if you'd consider consulting, maybe joining the board. What did you tell him? That I'd ask you. But I know what your answer will be. Richard smiled. I'll think about consulting. Very limited. But no board position. That life is done. He'd started a new venture, teaching executives about work-life balance, about presence, about what truly mattered. It was small, didn't pay much, but it was meaningful. And he only worked mornings, keeping afternoons and evenings sacred for family. I'm proud of you, Catherine said. Of who you've become. I'm proud of us. We nearly lost everything. But we didn't. We found our way back. Samuel called out, Dad, come up here. You can see the whole world from the treehouse. Richard climbed the ladder, sturdy now, properly built with Catherine's help over many weekends. From the platform, Samuel was right. You could see the whole world. Or, at least, the whole world that mattered. This is the best treehouse ever, Samuel said, hugging his father. Thank you for building it with me. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for getting better. Do you think we'll ever see Miriam again? Richard thought about the mysterious old woman who'd changed everything. I don't know, buddy. But she's always with us, in a way. Every time we choose to be present. Every time we choose love over work. Every time we remember what matters. I miss her.
Me too.
But we'll honor her by living the way she taught us. That night, Richard cooked dinner for his family, a skill he'd maintained and improved. As they ate together, talking and laughing, he felt profound gratitude. A year ago, he'd been a billionaire CEO heading for divorce with a dying son, having everything and nothing simultaneously. Now he had less money, no corporate power, and more happiness than he'd ever imagined possible. The impossible had happened. Not just Samuel's healing, that was miraculous enough, but Richard's own transformation. The death of who he'd been, and the birth of who he was meant to be. Later, lying in bed, Catherine asleep beside him, Richard thought about Miriam's last words. Choose again and again who you want to be. He made his choice, the same one he'd make tomorrow and every day after. He chose presence. He chose love. He chose family over empire. And in doing so, he'd found the real miracle wasn't that a mysterious old woman had healed his son. It was that in learning to feed her, to serve her, to be present for her, he'd learned to feed his own soul,
To serve his own family.
to be present in his own life. The millionaire hadn't believed. Until the impossible happened. Until he learned that the greatest wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was in his son's laughter, his wife's hand in his, and the daily choice to keep showing up with love. That was the miracle. And it was available to everyone who had the courage to choose it.
The end.